Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, ArcGIS Pro Fantasy Draft, Geoprocessing Tools. My name is Mark Ho. I am a Technical Solutions Specialist out of the Vancouver office. But more importantly, I am here in Toronto with our entire draft team. So I will be serving the role as draft coordinator for the next hour. And our team of experts are going to help you learn more about some of the geoprocessing tools that are available in ArcGIS Pro. But before we begin, just some logistical information. Yes, we are recording today's webinar, so if you are interested in reliving this particular presentation, you will be able to find it online. We will provide you a link with the follow-up email that will come up after the webinar is complete. And of course, if you have any information that you want to share to provide us some feedback, there will be an exit survey as well, so you'll be able to incorporate that into your feedback at the end of the presentation. There is also Q&A during today's presentation, so if there's anything that you see and you have any questions, please choose Ask All Panelists, and you could find that in your main panel there. Type in your question and then click Send. And if that doesn't work, then there's the other procedure where you can click on the three dots, be able to see the Q&A panel, and then you'll be able to type in the question. And we'll answer questions along the way, and we'll save some time at the end to be able to answer those questions as well. So the main goal in today's presentation is to identify some key geoprocessing tools that maybe you haven't discovered before and you want to learn more about. So we're going to identify a few of those. And we'll also want to be able to show you how they work. So each of these will have a little demo associated with it. And we also want to highlight a few of these tools that might be brand new to ArcGIS Pro. So we will show you a number of examples of that as well. But before we do, let's give you a really quick background on what geoprocessing is all about. As the name implies, geoprocessing is just processing of geographic data. So we provide a wealth of different tools that are available to help you process that data. And it could be in the world of data management, or maybe you want to convert data from one format to another, or for most people, they think of geoprocessing in terms of spatial analysis. So here's an example of some schools in Prince Rupert. You can create a simple buffer zone around those. So you have some kind of input data, and it's going to produce some output data at the end. Geoprocessing is also the framework for you to be able to automate many of these processes. So you can use like Model Builder or Python scripts to be able to just execute a series of geoprocessing functions and have them all executed en masse. Now in ArcGIS Pro, analysis occurs in the analysis ribbon. So through this ribbon, you'll be able to access not only a number of other functions for analysis, such as Network Analyst or Geostatistical Wizards, but we also have a gallery of the commonly used tools. You can customize that gallery if you want, or you can access the Model Builder, be able to change environments, get into that Python command line, and to be able to click on that Tools button, that little red toolbox, to be able to go into the geoprocessing pane. So in the geoprocessing pane is where you'll do most of your geoprocessing work. This is the place where you'll be able to search for tools, or if you want to do it by toolbox, you can find the tool that you need that way. And then once you open the tool, then you'll be able to set the parameters for the tool, any specific environment settings. You'll execute the tool and be able to track its progress as it's spinning up. And then you'll be able to view the results and also the history of that execution of the tool. So it's your one-stop shop, like I said, where you'll be able to access all of your geoprocessing functions in one place. Okay, it's time to draft. And the rules are really simple. We're going to go around the room. We're going to have everyone pick a geoprocessing tool out of the 1,400 plus geoprocessing functions that are out there, and then just do a quick little demo to be able to show how that tool works. And yes, it is a draft. So we have our draft board up and ready to go. We have pre-picked the order of the draft. So I think it's time to get going, right? And we're off to the first pick. And Samaya is going to give us the honors of that. So Samaya, how are things going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Are you excited that you are going to be picking first in today's draft?
So excited. Been waiting all season, prepping, research. Oh, you have no idea.
Oh, well, I'm really excited. So put down that hot dog and make that first selection from Costco. You are on the clock, Samaya. Make your pick.
So I am going to be picking the Enrich tool. And fun fact, the Enrich tool is being sponsored by Costco Poutine today. Okay, let's get into it. Let me show you what the Enrich tool can really do. So here we're looking at Edmonton wards, and let's say I work for the City of Edmonton's Transportation and Planning Department, and I want to get some more information about what is being done for public transportation in each of these wards. And I can do so by using the Enrich tool. So let's take a look. So first of all, the Enrich tool adds demographic and landscape facts about people and places that surround or inside your data. And you can do this with point data, lines, and polygons. So here we're going to be using some polygon data. So right here you see that it says that the tool does consume credits, and I'm logged into my ArcGIS Online account, and that's where it's going to be coming from. So I can either use the tool through ArcGIS Online, or I can have a locally installed business analysis data set for my region. So before we use this tool, the first thing we want to do is we want to set the environment. By default, it's set to the US, but I'm going to go ahead and pick Canada, and it's going to get all that data from the portal. I'm going to set my word boundaries for my input, and now I'm going to add some variables. And here is where I can select what data I want to see. So all these variables are coming from Environics Analytics, and you can get data from previous years, the current year, and sometimes even years in the future. So first, I'm going to be looking at the average spending of transportation for specifically in public transportation. And I want to get the average spending for that. Next, I'm going to be selecting the method of travel to a job, and I'm going to be selecting the percentage of people using public transportation to get to work. And finally, I also want to know who the people are who are going to the same place every day for work, so I'm going to also get that percentage. I'll be able to see all the variables here. They look good. So let's go ahead and run that tool. So while that's running, what the tool is actually doing is it's creating a feature class that's going to have these three variables appended onto my data set. So let's take a look at our attributes. So I want to see which ward is spending the most money on public transportation. Okay, so I see that that's Ward 9, but this seems a little peculiar here, that not a lot of people are using transportation to get to work. But there's also a lot of people who are going to the same place of work every day. So this kind of allows me to ask questions if there is enough transportation services that are in this ward. So the best part about this tool is not only does it give you information about your data, but it allows you to ask more questions that lead to your final solution. Back to you, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So, Samaya, with your first selection in today's draft, you have chosen the Enrich tool. So this is available through the Analysis Tools toolbox. It's available for all license levels, but the important thing to note is that it will consume credits if you're pointing your demographic data source towards ArcGIS Online. All right, so with the first pick has been done, we will now move down the table towards Allison. So Allison, what's going on?
Hey Mark, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. You know how it is. So why are you scared of eyeballs?
I had a traumatizing experience in grade 2 that I do not want to get into.
Okay, well, we will leave that a mystery, but what will not be a mystery is your second pick. You're on the clock.
Thanks so much, Mark. So I have chosen the Enable Feature Binning tool. So this tool aggregates large feature points into dynamic polygons that vary through scaled level of detail. So let's take a look at how feature binning can help us visualize large sets of data. So on my map here, I have data, or let's say I'm an employee from Doctors Without Borders, and I'm wanting to create a map showing the locations of earthquakes. So the data I have on my screen right here is from the U.S. Geological Survey from their website, and it's showing recorded earthquakes from October 25th of this year to today. So I'm going to scroll into Puerto Rico here to show you guys this high density cluster of points. It's kind of hard to interpret this information. It's not very visually appealing. So I want to use the feature binning tool to make this more visually appealing. So I want to bring you guys over to the catalog pane over here and show you that I've created an enterprise geodatabase connection. This is holding my earthquakes feature class right now, and I just wanted to let you guys know that this tool is not able to run out of a file geodatabase. You have to create an enterprise geodatabase connection. So my feature class is in my map right now, but I'm going to go to the geoprocessing pane and I'm going to type in enable feature binning. I'm going to open this up. So here is the tool. So for my inputs, I'm going to add my earthquakes feature class. For bin type, this is the shape of the bins that are going to be created, and I'm going to keep it as a flat hexagon. I found this one really good looking. And for the bin coordinate systems, I'm going to change it to the coordinate system of my map, which is Web Mercator. And now I'm going to add some summary statistics. So these summary statistics are the stats that will be stored in the bin cache. So they will also show up in the pop-ups that are generated from the bins. So my fields here are the fields from my attribute table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the magnitude, and I'm going to add a maximum, what the maximum magnitude is. Then I'm also going to add another field of the magnitude and input the minimum magnitude of that bin. So I'm going to keep this generate binning cache checked on. So this specifies whether to generate a static cache of the aggregated results or to aggregate visualizations on the fly. So Esri recommends to keep this checked on for a better performance. So now I'm going to run the tool. And as you can see here with the green check mark that it was successful. Now I'm going to go back to my catalog pane and drag my feature class back into the map. And this is our result. So from the side pane here, you can see that the darker colors means that there are more earthquakes in that bin, and the lighter colors mean that there are less earthquakes in that bin. So when I click on one of these bins here, so a dark blue one, in this pop-up, it shows that there are 52 earthquakes in this bin, with the maximum magnitude being 4 and the minimum being 3. And then I'll go over to one of the lighter colors here. So there's only one earthquake in this bin with a magnitude of 3. I also wanted to let you guys know that this output is dynamic. So as I zoom out of the map or zoom in, the output will change, as you can see here. So yes, this is the Enable Feature Binning tool, and it would be great for a company like Doctors Without Borders, because if you see here, this dark area means that the countries in this area would be affected by earthquakes. Back to you, Mark.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So again, the Enable Feature Binning tool has been selected second in our draft. And as noted, you will require a enterprise geodatabase or some other main database to be able to make this work. But as you saw, it was pretty effective in being able to summarize that data. And it's brand new to ArcGIS Pro 2.4, so that gets a shout out as a new tool that's available to you as well. By the way, I forgot to mention that you in the audience have a very important role to play in today's draft, so make sure you stay till the end of the draft, and then we'll have some participation at the end. But for now, we are now moving on to our third pick, and Andrea is going to have the pleasure and honor of being able to make that pick. So Andrea, how are things going?
All good, Mark. How are you?
Very good. Now, when you say Mary Poppins is your favorite Disney movie, is this the current version or the
It's
original?
it's the original.
OG, all
Yes,
the way.
OG version.
All right, fantastic. All right, so we're going to put down that ghost pepper, and we're going to make that selection for the third pick in today's draft.
Thanks, Mark. So I'm choosing the Analyze Tools for Pro geoprocessing tool. So the Analyze Tools for Pro geoprocessing is a geoprocessing tool which uses the Python 223 utility to analyze Python code or Python-based geoprocessing tools for functionality that is unsupported in ArcGIS Pro. So if you were previously or are currently using ArcMap, you may find that your scripts do not run in ArcGIS Pro, and this is because ArcMap uses Python 2, whereas ArcGIS Pro uses Python 3. So there are some differences between these two versions of Python, and Analyze Tools for Pro is going to tell you exactly what you need to update in your script in order for it to run successfully in Pro. So let's take a closer look at the tool. So the City of Waterloo is migrating from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro, and they have a Python 2 script that they use successfully in ArcMap to generate a hexagonal grid layer of the city. But will it work in ArcGIS Pro? Let's use the Analyze Tools for Pro tool to find out. So I will pull up the tool here, and it's pretty straightforward. You can see that you have to put in an input. So I have my Python script here for that outputs the hexagonal grid. And my output file will be selected here. And this is basically a report that will outline all the required changes to your script that you need to make in order for it to function in Pro. So let's run the tool here. And you can see the window will pop up, and there are quite a few warning messages. There are Python 2 to 3 errors on 3 separate lines. And what's nice is that you can actually open up the report, and it gives you those details here. You can copy the changed statement, like the print statements or the message here, and put it in your script to fix it. So I have the original script here, and you can see this is what my previous syntax looked like. The fixed script, I've already gone ahead and fixed it according to the report. So I will close out of that, return to the geoprocessing tool, and I'm going to run the fixed script again to show that those changes were the changes that were made will allow the script to run in ArcGIS Pro. So I'll change the output file again. I'll click Run. And I've already ran this previously, so I'm going to pull up the grid output, the fixed report. So as you can see, the input was the fixed Python script, and it indicates that there were no problems. So mostly in these reports, you're just going to see some syntax errors, so they're really easy to fix. And then our output, as you can see, I'll turn on this layer, is our hexagonal grid, and I have gone ahead and clipped it to the City of Waterloo. And you can see the tool finished running, and if you open this up again, you can see that there are no errors. So that's my pick, and back to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and that's amazing. No problem. Those are the 2 best words in any language here in GIS, so we'll take those. And you made a fantastic pick. So again, this is the Analyze Tools for Pro tool. You'll be able to find that in the Data Management Toolbox, and it's available for all levels. And I know a lot of you are beginning that migration process from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro, so this is definitely a tool you need to know, right? Right, exactly. Okay, this is going so well. Whoops, so well, I'm moving backwards here. Okay, so let's move on to our 4th tool, which is Maggie's, our 4th pick. Hi, Maggie, how's it going?
Going pretty well, Mark. I'm pretty excited about my pick today.
Are you really? How excited are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
I don't know. I think I'm probably a 10 out of 10, Mark.
10 out of 10, Maggie. That is fantastic. Well, I'm not going to hold you back. Please make your 4th selection as soon as I give you the ball. That'll be useful. So here you go. I will now hand that to you. You are now ready to make that pick. You're on the clock.
Great, thank you. Okay, the pick I have today for everyone is the Build Balance Zones tool. And this is a great tool. It's a spatial statistics tool. It's one of our clustering tools. So I pulled that up here. And today we're gonna look at this tool from the perspective of a employee for the City of Hamilton School Board. I've been tasked with making new boundaries for our high schools, make sure we got fairly even boundaries. So here you can see Hamilton with its neighborhoods lined up, and it's got some points representing the different high schools across the city. And I've got the data for the city here, the neighborhoods. I've got it so that each neighborhood that has a school in it is going to have a 1 for the school. If it doesn't have it, it's a 0. And then I've also got the population under 19, because those are the people who are going to be going to high school or are currently in high school. So that's who we're interested in. Today I'm going to put the input in here in our tool. I'm going to put the Hamilton neighborhoods in, and then put my name for the output here. Oh, excuse me. So let's just choose a location, put it in our default geodatabase set. There we go. Okay. And you have 3 options when you're using this tool for how you want to make those zones, and you can do it by attributes. You can select a number of zones with attributes, or you can just do a number of zones. Today we're going to stick with the attributes, and I'm going to choose my 2 attributes, which are a number of schools. I want 1 school in each of my zones, and I really want the 1 school. I don't want any zones that have no schools, so I'm giving that a huge weight. I'm going to go for 100 on that weight. And then I also want to try to get a fairly even population of students, so let's go for about 9,000 people in each of those 12 areas where we have schools, and I'm just going to give it a 50% weighting. We're going to have a spatial constraint. We want these zones to be, touching each other. We don't want students coming from all different areas, so we're going to have a contiguity of edges and corners, meaning that our zones have to touch across an edge or a corner. And then we're also going to add in another zone characteristic. We want them to be fairly compact. Obviously, people are going to school. You don't want to go all the way across the city, so let's try to have some compact areas. We don't need any other extra attribute constraints. Those are the ones we're going to consider today, and we don't have any categorical variables to worry about, so we're good for that. And we don't need any extra advanced parameters, because this tool, it's only really need that when you have a huge data set. We got a pretty reasonable sized data set today, so we can skip on that one. And we're going to run that. Okay. All right. And there we go. We've got 12 different school areas. So it's going to be a little bit different what you see depending on what you put in. It's using a generic statistical algorithm to come up with these values, and it doesn't actually change the borders of your features. So if you wanted to go in and change those out, you can. It's just going to add an extra field in your attribute table that numbers them based on the area that they are. So you can change those if you need to. And then also you can see the distribution chart. So here we have 1 school in each zone, just like we wanted. And let's see, we have a fairly even number of students as well. So that's pretty good. We got what we wanted to see for that. And you can also compare it with the actual city's the city's school boundaries that I have here. You can take a look at those. They're just underneath here, and just see they're not exactly the same, but it came up with a fairly similar one. So it can give you a good idea of how you might use this tool to kind of influence those decisions and get those balanced areas. All right. Okay.
That is fantastic. That is definitely a 10 out of 10 tool. So thank you very much, Maggie, for sharing this brand new tool that's out there. It is the Balanced, I can say it right, Build Balanced Zones tool, new at 2.4. Yeah. So we love that. You can find that within the Spatial Statistics Toolbox. They are available for all license levels except for one tiny parameter, which is only available for advanced. By the way, when you get the PDFs, you'll see the more information links at the bottom of each of those pages, so it will take you directly to the help page if you want to get some more information. So that takes us to the halfway point of today's draft, and this is a good time to sort of take a breath and maybe reflect and have a chance to be able to answer some of the questions that are coming online here. So I think we do have a question here that I can bring up, and I think this is going to be for you, Samaya. Let's see where it is. How come I can't scroll up? There it goes. Now we can scroll up. Okay, so the question is, using the Enrich tools with Pro, do we know the amount of credits that will be consumed before we run the actual function? That's a really good question.
Yeah, so when you open up the tool, there's a link at the top telling you the tool actually uses credits. And if you click that link, it'll take you to a web page describing how those credits will be consumed. So it won't tell you how many credits will be used beforehand, but it's pretty easy to calculate the total amount. And they give a few examples of how the calculations work. So I can just put in that link in the chat window. So if you want to take a look, you can do that there.
Awesome, that's amazing. Yeah, so if you have any questions about anything that you see in the presentation so far, once again, just feel free to type in that question in the Q&A, and we'll spend some time at the end of the presentation to address those questions. So thank you very much, Samaya, for taking care of that. I think it's time to now get going here, right? We're off to pick number 5. And Sapide, you are now going to be able to make the selection that flew you all the way in from Calgary to make, right?
Yes, Mark. I can't wait to show you what I chose.
Excellent. So what is your favorite color? You're such a great painter. Do you have a favorite color?
To be honest, every color have different meaning, but I like the contrast color. But do you know what? I wanted to bring color into LiDAR data. The tool that I'm choosing can bring this photorealistic display of colors to the LiDAR. So I can't wait to show you.
Awesome. All right. So I think you're going to make a selection that is based on LiDAR data. So please make the selection.
Okay, perfect. So the tool that I wanted to show you is a colorized LAS geoprocessing tool that applies colors and near-infrared value from orthographic imagery into point cloud. But what I'm showing you right now in this map is a colorized LAS dataset that I created for the city of Grand Prairie. As you see, applying colors to the last point can provide photorealistic display for the LiDAR data. Colorized LiDAR can create detailed images of local geology and can create project planning process. And also it can assist with the suitability analysis or environmental assessment. Imagine if you wanted to assess canopy density to investigate if the site is suitable for the field collection with heavy equipment. With this tool, you can plan for the further exploration of land without damaging the sensitive urban environment. I think you all agree with me. In this way, you can minimize environmental impacts and safety risks. Okay, wait, I wanted to show you how this tool works. In my map, I have classified LiDAR with high-resolution imagery. The tool that I chose as a colorized LAS using imagery to assign colors to LAS file. The bands from input image will be assigned to the color channels associated with the output LAS point. Also, you are required to define a folder where the output LAS dataset will be written to. I wanted to show you some best practice here. Only a LAS 1.4 file with point record format 8 can support near infrared value for the LAS points. So you may want to try using imagery that is as close to the scan date as possible to minimize differences due to events such as construction. Now, the output can be symbolized using RGB value. So, when you are playing with LiDAR data in ArcGIS Pro, sometimes colorized LiDAR can give you a breeze. And I hope you have fun exploring and using this tool. Have a happy 3D brain mapping.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sapide, and thank you for that very colorful tool that you provided for us. So again, this is the Colorized Glass tool. It is available in the 3D Analyst toolbox. So yes, we do require the 3D Analyst extension, but again, you can take advantage of the very cool colorized tools. You know, I love that tie with your paintings, Sabine. So if you are using glass data, and I think more and more people are going to be using LiDAR data as it becomes available, definitely take advantage of that tool. All right, so we'll now hit to the sixth pick. And Emily, you get the honor and pleasure of making that pick. How's it going, Emily?
It's going well.
Yeah, so tell me about this ketchup on mac and cheese. Is that something that absolutely repulses you?
Yeah, that's a no-go for me. Mostly ketchup on anything.
That's true. Ketchup is sort of a weird condiment, isn't it? All right, so the condiment corner is now finished. I'm going to pass things off to you with our sixth pick.
Thanks, Mark. So I wanted to focus on a tool that allows us to incorporate time into our analysis. So I'm working with just under 2 million data points from the City of Toronto regarding parking tickets that were handed out over the course of 12 months. So it includes the type of infraction and the date and time at which a bylaw officer handed out that ticket. So I'd like to know what might be the worst spot to park my car in the city to avoid getting a fine, and then find out maybe time-specific trends or patterns throughout the year. So in order to get our data into the format where time is really integrated into our analysis, we're going to need to use or to create a space-time cube. Now, there are two tools that can do this, but for my analysis today, I've decided to choose the Create Space-Time Cube by aggregating points. And this is going to aggregate incident events, in this case, the time and place at which a parking ticket was handed out, into these bins, and then summarize any attributes that I might have about those incidents into bins. So let's just illustrate this really quickly. Traditionally, when we display our data on a map, it's in a two-dimensional space. So there's a set of points, and there's an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. But like we saw with the parking ticket data, it's hard to see what's really going on. So with the space-time pattern mining tools, what we're able to do is treat this time as a third dimension. It's just another dimension that we can use to define what it means for these points to be near one another. And the tool is aggregating data in both a spatial and temporal grid. Okay, so let's see this in action. The space-time pattern mining toolbox contains statistical tools to analyze data, distributions, and patterns in the contents of both space and time, as I mentioned. So the first thing I need to do is summarize those 1.9 million points into a NetCDF data structure. And this is a file format that's often used for storing multidimensional scientific data. Could be temperature, humidity, pressure, maybe wind speed data. So we're first going to point to our parking ticket data and then choose a location for that to be stored. And then point to our time field within this layer. Then there's lots of options that we really need to define our space-time cube, but we'll start with the most basic, but it's also the most important settings. So we're going to create bins that are with a 1 month time step interval, and then 250 meter distance intervals. And then we can also decide what shape those bins are going to have. They can either be within a fishnet grid or a hexagon grid, as well as a defined location. So I'm going to choose the hexagon grid. Those are my favorite, and we'll get that started. So the tool is going to go ahead and start counting up the different number of tickets in each 250 meter by 250 meter spatial area over 1 month period. Now, if I had attributes associated with the time data, we could also summarize those using the summary field parameters. Now that that space-time cube is just about created, we can visualize that cube in 3D. I've already added a scene to my project, but what I'll do
is use the free downloadable add-in called the Spacetime Cube Explorer that's available in ArcGIS Online. And then what I'll do is, what it allows me to do is create or grab that spacetime cube as an input and then create layers that can be very quickly and beautifully displayed from my display theme gallery. So we'll let that load. And this gallery has a number of useful display options, like preset symbology, as well as range sliders and time sliders. And it just provides that kind of really seamless experience as you explore your results of that space-time grid. So let's take a look at where might be some of the worst spots to park in the city of Toronto. And as we take a closer look at these different bins, they're broken down on a month-to-month basis. And within this particular spot, we can see that within the month of, October, there's about 842 fines that were given out by bylaw officers. So it just gives me a better sense of where not to park within the city. So thanks, Mark. Back to you.
Fantastic. I love the Spacetime Cube. Shout out Spacetime Cube, and shout out to picking the tool with the longest name so I can switch it into my graphic. So create Spacetime Cube by aggregating points. Yay! Very cool. It is found within that Spacetime Pattern Mining Tools toolbox, and this is actually available for all license levels. So anyone who's got ArcGIS Pro, you can use this tool, and it is a very cool way of being able to consolidate that data over time. So that is a really great selection. Good job, Emily. Appreciate that. And now we are off to the pick number 7, and the smarter, the wiser, the better, MHO. Mingzi Ho is ready to make that selection. How's it going, Mingzi?
I'm good, and to say you are the original, so the OG MHO. So.
The OG MHO.
Yes.
Wow, this is fantastic. And who's your favorite character on The Office?
I'm gonna have to say Jim. He's just so smart. Those prank ideas.
You've never done that to anyone in this office, right?
No, of course not.
No, of course not. All right. Well, with that reassuring note, I will let you pick the 7th pick. So you're on the clock.
So my pick for geoprocessing tool is the Feature Compare tool. And the title of this tool is pretty self-explanatory. You're actually comparing between 2 feature class or layers, and the output provides you a description of the discrepancy between the 2 inputs. So I personally find this tool very helpful as someone who's guilty of naming my files and layers in a kind of non-descriptive way. So here I have my geodatabase of a recent project I've done. And as you can see, I have a layer name, and then I would add either the default name or just the number, just to, sometimes you're just so invested in playing around with results that the output file name you just neglected. So with this tool, it's handy to find out what layers or what you did with those layers, basically. So I can technically open each of these layers and try to find out visually or through the attribute table to see what the difference are. However, with this tool, you have a summary description at the end of it. So I'm going to work with this Canadian time zone layer, and it's the input this input layer is what I'm going to be comparing it to. And then we have my Canadian time zone 1. So I will sort the field by their object ID. And what this means is basically you're comparing the same row for each layer that you've inputted here. You can also do multiple fields. As for compare type, you have options to compare just geometry, attributes, the schema, or the spatial reference, but I'm going to do all just because I don't know what the difference are between those 2 layers. There are options to ignore certain characteristic of that layer, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. Then we get down to the tolerance level, and in the tolerance level, that's where you specify the the XY, the number value. So you have the XY, so where the vertex or the Z value, as well as any value, the field values.
so the fields that have values in it. So I'm going to leave it as it is. And remember, the smaller the number, the less of an error you'll get, or the less of the mismatch you'll get. And then if you put 0, you're just looking for the exact match. Next, we have these omit fields. So you have the option to omit certain fields from running in this geoprocessing tool. And the next parameter here is actually, I think it's the most important, but I'm not sure why it's the tiniest. This allows you, if you have this, if you don't have this checked off, that means that you will, once you hit the first mismatch, it'll stop the geoprocessing tool, and you'll basically not be able to get the summary of what is not mismatched between the two layers. So if you have this checked off, you get the summary. And with the summary, I'm just going to save that text file on my desktop as 123. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to put it as feature compare. Oops, if I can spell results. I'm going to hit save and then run. So this tool always comes back with a warning when there is a difference or a mismatch between the two layers. So let me just pull out the text file. Now, this is kind of a little intimidating because it's just like a blurb of text. However, actually, you can put this as a table format. To understand this, it has like the header of the results. So you have to read it kind of like a table. So the has error means that if it's true, then there's a mismatch. If it's false, then the characteristic of that between the two layers are very similar, or sorry, is exact match. So here you can see that it gives you the table count difference between the base input and then the input you have tested against. So you can see the row counts are significantly different. The number of fields are also different. There's also the attributes that it looked at. So you can see here object ID number 1. There are 2 different. They're all different, basically. They're all true here. And the characteristic of the attribute is different. So with this tool, it's pretty powerful, and it saves time when it comes to cleaning up your data set. Mind you, this is not the only scenario you can use this tool. You can also compare for duplicates within your data set, as well as different versioning. So my advice is to spend time filling out the parameter to narrow down the results. Well, take it back, Mark.
Brilliant. That is amazing. Thank you very much, Smarter Wiser MHO. Appreciate that. Did the ball come back? Oh, yeah, it did. Of course it did. All right. So with that 7th pick, Mingzi has chosen the Feature Compare tool. You'll find that in the Data Management Toolbox. Again, this is going to be really useful. It happens to all of us where we have 2 different sets of data with the same name, and you want to know which one's the newer one or which one's the better one. This is the go-to tool to be able to find that. And again, this is available for all license levels. So Mingzi, shout out. Thank you very much. Good job on that. Which takes us to the final pick in the draft. And with this, we have to go to the most senior member of the table. Mike, how's it going?
Pretty good, Mark. How you doing?
Yeah, you know, I'm doing all right. So of all the sports that you are participating in right now, which one's your favorite?
I'd have to go with curling right now, Mark. It is the time of year to be right into curling and have a good time with it. All
right. Well, it's time to now be in the hack and ready to throw your rock, because you now have the 8th selection in the draft, so make it count.
Thanks, Mark. So for my selection here, we're going to be using Find Closest Facility. You would traditionally use this for finding things like closest hospital to an accident, or maybe the closest store to a series of customers. But since we do love curling so much, we're going to use it today to find how we can get to different curling clubs in a little bit quicker and a little more efficient time here. So we've got all the curling clubs here available to us in British Columbia. Traditionally, we'd use Find Closest Facilities to, with the Network Analyst extension, with our own data sets for the network. And we'd use it with a series of tools like the Solve and the Make Location Allocation tool. But we're going to do this today a little bit differently. We're going to move into a bit more southern British Columbia here. And we're going to take a look specifically here at the Esri Canada office here in Vancouver, where Mark is. So Mark is aspiring, still wants to get to the Brier. That's our national championship. But in order to do that, he is going to have to get to some curling clubs after work to practice. So which would be the best ones for him to use that he can get to in the quickest way possible? So that's where we're going to use the find close facility tools. I mentioned traditionally we would use it over here on the right with our network analyst tools, but Mark only needs to do this a couple times a year. So in order to do that, we'll use the ready to use tools and find closest facilities in this regard. So I'm going to pull this up here. Well, notice this tool consumes credits. So somebody talked about credits earlier in the webinar. This tool also, since we only use it a couple times a year, it's a really good choice for us. I don't need the overhead of the network analyst extension or managing my own network. I can rely on the tools in ArcGIS Online. So my instance will be Mark here in the Vancouver office. The facilities will be the British Columbia curling clubs we have. Mark wants to figure out what would be the 5 closest facilities, and he does not want to drive for any more than 60 minutes. So let's take this tool and we will we'll run that and we'll get into the results. So using the power that's available to us through find closest facilities, through my named user in ArcGIS Online, I'm able to figure out that these would be the 5 curling clubs that Mark would want to potentially consider. We have the Vancouver Curling Club, lots of curl on that ice, Mark, so be careful if you go there. They're really going to swing on your interns. But Mark might also want to consider some of these other clubs. He does not want to travel, though, north out of the city. He wants to stay, a little more southern. When he has to get home from the clubs, he does not want to travel too far. So we can make some changes to the tool here, and there's a lot of different parameters you can use. So let's just make a few modifications here to our data set, or the data we're going to work with. We're going to put some barriers up on the bridges. We're going to take into account real-time traffic, which we can bring into the equation here. We'll say he's doing this after work sometime. That'll work fine. We will also, what else can we do here? We'll put those barriers up. That's going to be really important as well. Let's put the actual barrier layer that I want. And the output, we can make sure we get some directions as well. So we'll populate the directions and give us that with specific parameters that we would like to use. So running the tool again, we're hopefully going to get different results, Mark. We're going to keep you on the mainland. Make sure we turn those curling clubs back on, and let's see what we get in this regard. And the results come in, and this is nice. We're not traveling across the bridges here. We're going to head over to the Port Moody Curling Club. They have a really nice lounge there, from what I understand. So that'd be a good place to check out to relax after you've thrown some rocks, practice for the Briar, and hopefully get to the Briar like you really want to do, Mark. And with that, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I do have some high aspirations to be the next Ed Wernick, so I'm going to be working on that. That is a total 8-ender tool. So Mike has chosen the Find Closest Facilities tool, and he did something that's really cool. He went outside the box and used that ready-to-use tools. So you can access that tool that way. And the big advantage of this, of course, is that you don't need to have your own networks to be able to do this analysis. You can use our networks that are hosted in ArcGIS Online, or if you happen to have it in Enterprise, you can do that as well. But of course, if you use the online version, you'll be consuming credits to be able to execute that specific tool. So that is awesome. And that sort of completes the draft that we were having today, and we do have our 8 tools here, but we also have a number of questions. So let's see if we can handle some of those. One of the questions has to do with the Enable Feature Binning tool. So will the hexagon bins in the Enable Feature Binning tool track changes made to the earthquake layer without rerunning the tool? So Alf, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, of course. So I downloaded that CSV from the Geological Survey website. So it's a static table. It doesn't update when their website updates. So if you would want the most recent data, you would have to go back to the US Geological Survey website, download that CSV, use your XY table to point tool, and then re-add that into your enterprise geo database to get the most recent data for earthquakes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We also got another question here concerning the tool we saw a little bit earlier with the feature compare tool. So can a feature compare tool with a geometry compare type help identify slivers? That's a really interesting question. Means you get an answer for that?
Yeah, so when you specify the geometry compare, when you focus it on just the geometry, it actually only focuses on the vertices of the geometry. So if your two layers have a different number of vertices or the position of the vertices are different, that would flag it. The tool would flag it.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, we do have one more question here. Is there a raster equivalent to the build balance zones tool? So, Maggie, do you have an answer for that question? Very interesting.
Yeah, I do have an answer for that one. This tool, just like all the other tools in the mapping cluster tool set, is only for the featured layer, so it's only for points and polygons. But you could always use another great geoprocessing tool or a raster to polygon tool to convert your rasters into polygons, and you could run it through this build balance zones, and I think that's probably your best bet for getting that done.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thanks for all the great questions. We're going to continue. If you have any questions in the next few minutes, go ahead and fire away. But you know what? I have to be honest. These are 8 pretty cool tools, but I think I can one-up all of you. So I'm going to make a special bonus 9th pick in today's draft. So here's my bio. Yeah, I've got some weird things that are wrong with me, so you can read them in the card. But I want to focus specifically on a brand new tool that's available in the newest version of ArcGIS Pro at 2.4, and I'm going to show you a tool called the Local Bivariate Relationships tool. So what is the purpose of this tool? It allows you to be able to take 2 attribute values and be able to learn about the relationship between them at a local level. So what does that mean? Well, first you can use, first of all, I have the dissemination areas for the Lower Mainland here in the Metro Vancouver area, and I use this amazing tool called the Enrich tool, #FullCircle. Then from that, I grab 2 attributes. I grab the average income for each of those dissemination areas, and also the percentage of people that own their homes within each of those dissemination areas. So this is my theory. This is what I want to test for the lower mainland in the Vancouver area. I want to test to see that as the income increases, the percentage of home ownership also increases. So I'm going to use this local bivariate relationships tool to be able to identify those local areas that will either match my theory or maybe contradict my theory. So when this tool loads, it's going to provide me the ability to put in an input. So I'm going to throw in our dissemination areas. And then we need to identify those 2 variables. So the explanatory variable is going to say, okay, as this value changes, in this case, if my average income changes, how is that going to affect the percentage of home ownership? So that's how you distinguish between explanatory versus the dependent variable. Now, you can determine the number of neighbors. It could be as low as 30, could be as high as, I think it's 999 or something like that. But of course, you can always increase the number of neighbors, but then it doesn't become very local as you expand out to find more neighbors. So you do have to sort of negotiate what that number is going to be. We'll just stick with the 30 as default. The number of permutations, so how many times you're going to run through this analysis. Again, there's a number of choices here that you can choose between 99 and 999. The more permutations you have, of course, the longer it's going to take, but it probably will be a little more accurate. So, we'll just take the default on that. And there's also a level of confidence, 90, 95, 99. Again, the higher the level of confidence, the longer it's going to take, but probably be a little more accurate. So we're going to balance this and try to run this really quick. There is also the little checkbox here to be able to provide us some local scatter plot pop-ups, and we'll show you what that looks like in a sec. Now, as always with any of our tools, you click on the little help button. So if you want to learn more about the details of each of the tools, you can go into that help button directly. And for this case, there's a lot of statistics and science going on. So for many of the spatial statistics tools, you can learn exactly how the tool works, the methodology, etc. So you can peruse all of that information within the help documentation as it's executing. Okay, so it's now almost done with the analysis. And let's test and see what this is going to look like. So what happens in the end is that it's going to create these 6 colored types of relationships. And it's either going to be positive, linear, negative, linear, concave, convex. If it's in yellow, there's some kind of relationship going on between the two variables, but it can't quite define it in a line. And then there are those non-significant relationships where the two variables don't have any similarity at all. So as we take a look here, again, I'm testing to see that as the income average increases, the level of home ownership increases. And those dark purple areas will reflect that. You notice when I click on the dissemination area, you'll see that scatter plot appear with the 30 neighbors, and you'll be able to see sort of the trend line of each of those neighborhoods, and you'll be able to hover over the scatter plot, be able to get more specifics that way. So you can see that there's many areas in Vancouver, especially near downtown, that are sort of meeting my theory of that linear increase. But there's also areas that are concave. So you can see here that there is a significant increase in home ownership as the income rises, but then there's a little bit of a dip as you reach that top income as well. So it's really interesting that for a lot of these neighborhoods, especially the richer neighborhoods in town like Shaughnessy and Point Grey, you'll see that they have more of a concave relationship. What's really interesting to me is that there is actually some areas in Vancouver that are convex. In other words, you'll be able to see that for lower incomes, there's high ownership. For higher incomes, there's low home ownership, but for the middle income, it actually takes a little bit of a dip. So that's really interesting. So I wonder if these neighborhoods have a significant middle class that prefers renting over home ownership. What is also interesting is that this particular neighborhood, this is Fleetwood out in Surrey, it is going to have a SkyTrain expansion coming up. So maybe if you are in the Surrey area, maybe you're in a municipality, you might want to recognize this neighborhood and maybe zone appropriately based on the rental needs and how that distribution of renters versus income impacts that particular neighborhood. So that's something that urban planners can work on in the future. So hopefully that gives you a little taste of how this tool works, so how you can test the relationship between two different variables to be able to see those localized results. And the beautiful thing about this is that it's available, again, at all license levels, so you can go to the Spatial Statistics Toolbox and be able to access the local bivariate relationships tool. All right, so that was definitely horn-worthy, right? Okay, maybe not. All right, so now we are officially completing the draft, but we do have one more very important function before we wrap things up, and that is we need to have a winner of the draft. So on your poll window, you should be able to see the poll of who won today's fantasy draft. So go out there and pick who you think had the coolest tool out of everyone. So we got another 15 seconds, and you can use any criteria you want. We have a huge prize coming here at the end to be able to establish who exactly won today's draft. And hopefully out there in the audience, you had a little bit of fun with this. You know, this is our last one of the year, so we want to make sure that everyone had a good time and end the year well with sort of a fun way to be able to show that information. Okay, so now I'm going to be able to show the poll results to see if we have a winner. Are they showing up? They're showing up, right? There it is. So who won? Maggie's the winner. How about that? Congratulations. We have a winner of today's draft. Maggie, with the Build Balance Zones tool, has won today's draft. Congratulations. That is huge. And we have the best prize possible for you. We have a pile of 2019 Esri Canada calendars waiting for you. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got boxes that are downstairs, the perfect stocking stuffers. So please enjoy that wonderful prize that we provided to you, and congratulations on winning today's fantasy draft. All right, we've been pretty silly today, but hopefully you got some real information out of this. So through today's webinar, you're able to hopefully discover some new geoprocessing tools you never thought about and be able to see through our demos how they work. If you want some more resources on how to be able to use the geoprocessing functions with ArcGIS Pro, there's lots of great docs that are out there. So through the documentation, there's a section that is specific to spatial analysis. Of course, you'll be able to learn more about each of the tools through the tool reference. And there's some really interesting case studies. If you want to read more about how analysis is applied in the real world, you can learn that as well. Speaking of learning, there's the Learn ArcGIS website. There is a gallery of lessons so that you can download data and run through a tutorial if you want to be able to test some of these tools on your own. And of course, we have these great blogs entries that are happening, either the Esri Canada blog, the Esri Inc. folks in Redlands. They always contribute lots of interesting content on their blog. And there's a specific spatial statistics resource page on GitHub. If you are more interested on sort of the background of spatial stats, you can learn those as well. We also want to do a quick plug for the Esri Canada technical videos. So we have a YouTube channel with these short little videos to be able to focus on a specific topic. So we really want you to take a look at some of the cool videos, and there's going to be a ton more videos coming up in 2020. So take a look at that page. Of course, we have our user conferences. We just wrapped up the fall session, but we're going to be back at it in April 2020. We do have a couple of webinars that are coming up. One is in French that talks about quick capture, but the big one, January 30th, 2020. Circle that on your calendar right now. We are going to have our Vision 2020 See What Others Can't webinar featuring Chris North. So that's going to be a huge webinar. We definitely want to make sure you tune in for that. And of course, our training group has a number of really interesting relevant courses related to ArcGIS Pro and spatial analysis. Again, this webinar is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to access that online through our webinars page. You'll also receive an email that will have that link once that is all assembled. And if you do have any additional questions for us, we do have our email addresses here on this page. And of course, through social, if you want to be able to connect with us, there's a number of different vehicles to be able to do that as well. So with that, we really appreciate you tuning into today's webinar. I hope you had a little bit of fun and learned something along the way as well. I'm going to ask Ian to stop the recording, and then we might take a few extra questions. So thank you again. The best of the season to you and yours. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again in the new year. Thanks.